Kennedy Brooks paused just inside the glass doors of the boutique, swallowing a sharp breath. Her thrifted dress hung loosely, the faded fabric a patchwork of soft blues and grays. Her simple flats barely made a sound against the polished marble floor, and her plain tote bag rested unassumingly at her side. The room felt like a different world, the scent of rare perfumes mingled with the faint notes of polished wood and leather. Crystal chandeliers cast sparkling light, reflecting off mirrored panels and gleaming racks of impeccably tailored garments. Every surface gleamed with attention to detail that marked clear exclusivity. She took a tentative step forward, tasting the electric hum of restrained conversations and polite laughter. A group of women near the entrance cast sidelong glances her way, their lips twitching with barely concealed amusement. One of them leaned in, whispering sharp words loud enough to carry. "Did you see her shoes? Looks like she wandered in from a thrift shop by mistake." Another murmured, "Probably lost, might be trying to hitch a free latte." Kennedy kept her gaze polite but steady, though heat flushed her cheeks. Her heart kicked hard against her ribs, but she forced calm into her posture, lifting her chin just enough to seem poised. From across the room, a woman in a tailored black dress with a perfectly sculpted bun noticed her entrance. The boutique attendant eyed Kennedy with thinly veiled suspicion, her gaze flickering from Kennedy's simple flats to the worn tote, then back to her hesitant stance. She crossed her arms, lips pressed into a tight line. Nearby, a sharply dressed man smirked and whispered to his companion, "Must be some kind of employee. Doesn't look like she belongs here." The laughter that followed was soft but unmistakable. Kennedy exhaled slowly, hands clenched at her sides, feeling the eyes settle on her like a weight she couldn't shake. The boutique attendant's footsteps clicked sharply as she approached Kennedy. Her lips curled into a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes, which gleamed with thinly concealed disdain. "Can I help you?" she asked, voice cool and clipped. "Are you sure you're in the right place? This is a private shopping experience for our clients." Her eyes flicked down to Kennedy's simple flats, the faded tote bag, and the thrifted dress that might have passed unnoticed on any other day. Kennedy met the gaze evenly, though her throat tightened. "I'm here to browse, maybe find a gift for a friend," she replied with quiet calm, hands folded gently in front of her. She sounded steady, more steady than she felt, but the tightness in her chest remained. The room seemed suddenly tighter, the air thicker. The attendant arched an eyebrow, a slow, mocking smile blooming. "Browse? Here? Darling, this boutique only serves a select clientele. You must understand, not everyone is welcome." Her voice lifted, clear enough for nearby patrons to overhear. "It's not just about money, it's about presence, about what you represent." She gestured vaguely to Kennedy's outfit, eyes sparkling with cruel mockery. "Which, I'm afraid, is quite lacking." A ripple of laughter echoed from a nearby cluster of women, their phones raised towards Kennedy in idle amusement. One whispered loudly, "Maybe she's lost," or a charity volunteer trying to sneak a peek. Another added, "Are you sure you don't need directions back to the thrift store?" Their eyes glittered with derision as snide laughs spread. Kennedy's breath caught uncomfortably. The teasing felt heavier than words, like cold water poured over her skin. Faces around her blurred, some curious, others amused, a few openly judgmental. She could feel the prickling heat of flushed cheeks and sting of humiliation. But she forced herself to remain upright. Her fingers curled tightly around the bag's worn straps. "I didn't expect this to feel so unwelcoming," Kennedy said, voice trembling despite her best efforts. A sting lingered on her tongue though, and she swallowed hard. "I came because I appreciate craftsmanship and design." The attendant's smile deepened, sharpening like a blade. "Oh, we appreciate those things too, just not from people who don't fit the brand's image." She She leaned closer, lowering her voice but making certain others heard. "You don't belong here, Kennedy. You're a curiosity at best. This is not a charity event. Please, leave before you embarrass yourself further." Kennedy blinked, cheeks burning. The room seemed to press in, every glittering light bearing down on her like judgment. Someone in the crowd whispered, "She should just go, this isn't her world." Another chuckled, "Imagine thinking you could walk in here unnoticed." Their laughter formed a barrier. Kennedy was trapped inside a bubble of ridicule. She opened her mouth to respond but found the words caught in her throat. The tight knot in her chest grew heavier as a lump formed. With every heartbeat, the shame threatened to crush her. Her lips trembled briefly before she closed her mouth and forced herself to stand still. Another boutique employee appeared, subtly signaling to the attendant. "We'll have to ask you to wait in the corner, away from other clients," the attendant declared, her tone final. She gestured toward a cramped area near the back of the boutique, behind a large clothing display. "You're welcome to look, but please, no more disturbing our guests." Her eyes flicked around the room, ensuring everyone was watching. Kennedy nodded slowly, the flames of humiliation crawling up her neck. The walk to the side seating felt like crossing a minefield. Every step drew furtive glances and stifled chuckles. She sunk into the offered chair, fingers tightening around the hem of her dress. She kept her gaze forward, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. Around her, the boutique hummed back to normalcy. Conversations resumed, glasses tinkled, and the attendant turned her attention to another, more suitably dressed customer. Kennedy's throat tightened, her breath shallow. She realized the entire room had witnessed the rebuff, and no one had moved to interrupt or defend her. A sober silence filled her ears, louder than any whispered insult. The sting of invisibility pressed hard. With cheeks flushed and eyes blurred, she clutched her bag tighter, a cold wave of vulnerability washing over her. Despite the humiliation, a small fire flickered quietly inside her. She lifted her chin just a fraction, drew a slow breath, and stared out the boutique's tall windows at the busy street beyond. Their world felt far removed, but she wasn't ready to disappear just yet. For a moment, the laughter and judgment softened from sharp edges to distant noise. Kennedy closed her eyes briefly and steadied herself. The wide, crystal-lit room might have deemed her unworthy, but she had come with purpose. She held tightly to that. Around her, the boutique buzzed on, the hostess casting occasional glances her way, suspicious and condescending. Yet beneath those looks, Kennedy silently vowed not to be defined by them. The afternoon stretched ahead, a challenge she wasn't willing to surrender before the first word was spoken. As the shadows shifted past the chandelier's glow, Kennedy sat alone, the weight of 1,000 gazes settling around her like a cloak. But beneath it, beneath the tremor and flush, simmered a quiet resilience she wore as simply as the thrifted dress she could not yet afford to replace. As the boutique returned to its usual rhythm, the buzzing of whispered conversations resumed, punctuated by bursts of polite laughter and soft footsteps on the marble floors. The attendant, Anna, smoothed the fabric of her tailored dress and exchanged a satisfied glance with a colleague. The faint sparkle in her eyes was one of triumph, as if she had performed a necessary service for the boutique's sanctity. She believed firmly in the exclusive nature of the place, in protecting it from what she called imposters or uninvited guests. To her, people like Kennedy undermined the boutique's carefully crafted image, cheapening the experience for those who rightfully belonged there. Anna's mind replayed the moment. She was proud of how she'd handled the situation, of how effortlessly she'd maintained control. The woman had clearly overstepped, giving that timid, out-of-place look, and Anna was merely preserving the elegance and exclusivity everyone expected. In her eyes, it wasn't cruelty, it was brand protection, a necessary gatekeeping. She justified the public humiliation as a lesson for Kennedy and others who might try to blur the lines of social class and sophistication. With confidence buoyed, Anna returned to serving other patrons, who smiled and murmured their approval. The atmosphere had shifted back to the familiar luxury buzz. Shoppers soon immersed themselves in discussing designer cuts and exclusive fabrics. The boutique was once more a calm sea of decorum and refinement, at least outwardly. But just a few steps away, seated by the large display window, Kennedy sat quietly, her hands folded over her bag. Her eyes were cast downward, a delicate trace of moisture lingering at the corner, barely visible but telling. She breathed steadily, suppressing the welling tide of frustration, hurt, and disbelief. The cold edge of embarrassment clung stubbornly. Her fingers curved tightly around the bag strap like a lifeline, anchoring her to the moment, even as she fought to keep the flicker of defiance alive. Kennedy's thoughts were a mix of raw emotions and jangling resolve. She wasn't naive, she knew elegance and wealth often lived in a bubble separate from hers, and she'd felt the sharp sting of exclusion before. But what stung most was the public spectacle, the visible judgment, and the way it was accepted and even encouraged by those around her. She noted how many eyes didn't look away, how silence had formed an invisible wall between her and the room. Just as the weight seemed unbearable, a figure appeared nearby, a sharply dressed man with a calm, yet authoritative presence. His dark tailored suit contrasted with the casual elegance around him. He moved with purpose, carrying a small leather envelope proudly embossed with the boutique's logo. Kennedy glanced up, startled. The man approached, nodding discreetly to one of the boutique's managers, who then excused themselves from their station and walked toward Kennedy. The air shifted as murmurs rippled through the nearby customers. Conversations faltered, and heads turned, a sudden change from near dismissal to curiosity. The manager knelt slightly and extended the embossed envelope with a respectful smile. "Ms. Brooks, this is for you," she said softly, her tone edged with apology. "You're invited to the VIP salon later this evening. And this," she added, holding up a sleek handbag from the boutique's latest exclusive collection, "is a gift from the house, in recognition of your upcoming involvement with the brand." Kennedy blinked, momentarily speechless, the edge of surprise flickering across her face before improbably softening into grace. A faint stir ran through the room as people nearby exchanged looks, whispers spreading from mouth to mouth like wildfire. Onlookers who had shown scorn moments before now watched with wary fascination. Phones were raised, covert glances exchanged, and a hum of speculation rose, a palpable tension rippling through the boutique. The atmosphere transformed swiftly from cold exclusion to tentative respect, the air tinged with an electric mix of confusion and intrigue. Nearby, Anna's confident composure faltered. She tightened her grip on a nearby rack of garments as her jade-green eyes narrowed in disbelief. Her lips pressed into a thin line, the faintest tremble betraying shock. The woman she dismissed and mocked was evidently no ordinary visitor. Kennedy held the handbag gently, her fingers tracing the soft leather with quiet pride. She listened to the whispers surrounding her, muffled but unmistakable. For a moment, the weight of the earlier humiliation softened under the unexpected recognition. But she did not lift her voice to respond. Instead, she sat with calm dignity and an elegant, resolute stillness. The entire scene shifted subtly but decisively. The question on every lip was no longer if Kennedy belonged, but who she really was. The jewelry glinted brighter, the conversations became hushed and charged. The boutique's exclusive air was suddenly layered with surprised respect, as a slow and unmistakable realization crept through the gathered crowd. Kennedy exhaled softly, the tension of earlier moments easing but her eyes glinting with renewed determination. Within her, the flame of quiet resilience burned steadily, tempered now with the complex mix of vindication and patience. The long-standing barrier of judgment had been pierced, not with confrontation, but through quiet assertion of value. She was here, and the boutique was taking note. The boutique manager cleared her throat gently, drawing the attention of the gathered crowd. Eyes flicked toward her, mouths closing as curiosity ripened into focus. Stepping forward with a calm grace that contrasted sharply with the earlier tension, she addressed the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct pleasure to formally introduce Ms. Kennedy Brooks." A collective murmur rose as Kennedy looked up, her poised expression signaling she was prepared for this moment. The manager continued, "Ms. Brooks will be the keynote speaker at the upcoming Fashion Innovation Gala, an event that celebrates creativity and sustainability in the industry. Beyond that, she is a major sponsor of our boutique's newest eco-conscious collection, one we believe is transforming the way fashion intersects with responsibility." Gasps echoed quietly throughout the boutique, the air thick with disbelief. Kennedy's announcement was a revelation that shattered long-held assumptions in a single breath. The genteel crowd, many of whom had only moments before sneered openly at her thrift store attire, stared with wide eyes and whispered feverishly. From the back of the boutique, the CFO stepped forward, his presence commanding immediate respect. Tailored suit immaculate, he offered a polite nod toward Kennedy before addressing the guests in clear, measured tones. "I am proud to acknowledge Ms. Brooks as not only a visionary entrepreneur but the driving force behind our upcoming sustainable apparel line. She brings invaluable insight and investment to this brand's future." His gaze swept over the audience, lingering on the boutique attendant. Anna's face, once smug and ambitious, was now painted with disbelief and dawning realization. Her lips parted as if to protest, but no words came. The confident mask she wore so carefully had cracked under the weight of Kennedy's unexpected prominence. Phones appeared in a chorus of raised hands, capturing the moment for social media and private circles alike. The whispers surged into excited chatter. Faces that had turned away now leaned in, fumbling with apologies and awkward stares as their prior mockery became a burden too heavy to bear. Several guests who had been among the loudest critics offered hurried, stammered apologies. A woman with perfectly coiffed hair approached Kennedy cautiously, voice hesitant but sincere. "Ms. Brooks, I didn't realize. Your work is incredible. I'm sorry if I seemed rude." Kennedy nodded, a small smile playing at her lips but tempered with kindness and dignity. She did not gloat or wield her newfound status like a weapon. Instead, she remained composed, cool and elegant, her simple dress a quiet but powerful statement. When asked briefly about her minimalist appearance, Kennedy shared, "This dress is part of my commitment to sustainable fashion. Minimalism is not only a style but a value I live by. It's a reminder of where I started and what I aim to achieve." Her voice was calm and sincere, resonating with authenticity. The unexpected contrast between her understated look and the high-profile career story she shared stirred a palpable emotional response. The room seemed to pulse with a mixture of respect, regret, and reflection, as the privilege and exclusion they had upheld came into sharp relief. Kennedy's grace under pressure created a compelling mirror, illuminating the snobbishness and superficiality that had threatened to overshadow genuine creativity and purpose. Several patrons, once dismissive, quietly approached the handbag she now held, a symbol of the boutique's recognition and partnership. The craftsmanship, once taken for granted, now seemed to bear a deeper meaning through Kennedy's connection to it. The fine leather, intricate stitching, and sustainable materials became more than luxury, they embodied a movement and a message. Anna lingered near the back, watching the transformation with a knot of discomfort tightening in her chest. With every whispered apology, every admiring glance cast Kennedy's way, the attendant felt the ground shift beneath her professional identity. Her assumptions about worth and belonging had been dismantled in front of an audience that hadn't just witnessed but celebrated Kennedy's rise. Yet through the swirling emotions and shifting loyalties, Kennedy exuded calm strength. She offered no recriminations or harsh judgments. Instead, she stood as an emblem of determination, resilience, and understated power. Her journey, told briefly but candidly, was a quiet rebuke, a reminder that worth could not be measured by appearances or superficial status. As the crowd began to disperse, still abuzz with renewed respect, Kennedy allowed herself a moment of private satisfaction. The boutique, once a place of exclusion and derision for her, had become a stage where she could silently affirm her place, and in doing so, subtly change the atmosphere. The power that came with her identity was quiet but undeniable. Outside the large windows, the city's rhythm continued unabated, but within the walls of the boutique, a subtle evolution had taken place. The hard lines of class distinction softened, if only for a moment, under Kennedy's composed presence. The story of a simple woman in thrift clothes defying expectations ignited conversations that would ripple far beyond the marble floors and sparkling chandeliers. And in that moment, Kennedy Brooks was not just a visitor or a joke. She was a force, a creator, an investor, a beacon of meaningful change in a world too often blinded by surface and status. The boutique, its patrons, and even the once arrogant attendant could no longer pretend she was anything less. The boutique's elegant murmur shifted abruptly as the CFO strode forward with quiet authority, clearing his throat to command attention. His sharp gaze found Anna, the boutique attendant whose earlier cruelty now seemed painfully ill-placed. With a tone that left no room for debate, he addressed the room. "Anna, your conduct today has fallen short of the standards we uphold here." His voice was steady, measured but firm. "Excluding and humiliating a guest under false assumptions is unacceptable. Effective immediately, you will be relieved of your duties in the boutique and reassigned pending further review." A tense silence followed, all eyes darting between Anna and the CFO. Whispers erupted, some of surprise, others of vindication. The patrons' earlier amusement at Anna's hostility now turned toward cold disappointment and quiet gossip. A cluster of customers exchanged knowing looks, avoiding Anna's gaze as if she suddenly bore unfamiliar weight. Anna's face blanched. The confident poise she'd worn like armor fractured into vulnerability. She swallowed hard, lips pressed into a tight line, fighting the sting of humiliation now mirrored back onto her. The once familiar sparkle in her eyes dimmed under the icy glare of public censure. Without a word, she turned and walked briskly toward the boutique's private offices, leaving behind a trail of whispered speculation. Word spread rapidly through social channels after patrons posted videos of the confrontation. Anna's professional reputation took a sharp hit, stories circulated about customer mistreatment, and she became an unlikely subject of social media backlash. The boutique announced an immediate training program emphasizing inclusivity and respect, a new chapter born from the incident. Days later, fate brought Kennedy and Anna face to face near the boutique's exit. Anna's footsteps faltered as she caught sight of Kennedy waiting quietly by the door, her expression calm yet steady. For the first time, Anna's lips parted in an unspoken apology, her eyes flickering with genuine remorse. "I'm sorry," Anna murmured, voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I was protecting the brand. I was wrong." Kennedy regarded her with a composed kindness, the earlier hurt softened but not forgotten. She nodded, a subtle smile touching her lips. "We all grow," she said simply. "Thank you for saying that." The moment hung between them, a quiet truce forged from honesty and grace. Anna exhaled deeply, a mixture of relief and shame passing across her features. As Kennedy stepped outside, the late afternoon sun cast a warm glow across the city streets. She walked with measured confidence, the weight of the confrontation melting away into a steady stride. Behind her, the boutique stood transformed, not just by the new policies or public scrutiny, but by the undeniable mark of her presence. Patrons and staff alike exchanged stunned glances, their lofty assumptions unsettled. Kennedy's journey, from the nervous woman in a thrift dress to a respected figure shaping the future of sustainable luxury, had left an indelible imprint. The boutique's doors closed softly behind her, sealing the change wrought inside. Kennedy moved forward with the quiet power of someone who had reclaimed her place without bitterness, leaving behind a space forever altered by dignity, resilience, and the grace to forgive. And all around, people watched in stunned silence, recognizing that a simple woman named Kennedy Brooks had illuminated new possibilities far beyond appearances and expectations.